Welcome to Stubs with Jason. Stubs. Hey people, welcome to Stubs with Jason, where I discuss movies, music, TV, pretty much all kinds of things on all kinds of screens. Today I will be talking about Twisters, the long-awaited legacy sequel to the Twister board game created in 1966, released everywhere by Milton Bradley, best known for its torturous bends that often result in loss of life or limb for its participants. I don't think that's right. We might be a little off here. But on a quick note, as I was researching I tried to see if there had been any documented fatalities as a result of the Twister board game, and it doesn't appear so. However, I was bombarded with headlines on the internet when I searched that said, "Boomers mourn, inventor of Twister dies, July 11th, 2013. So, there's that. And that led me down another rabbit hole where I learned that apparently the Germans really hated this game when it came out because it encouraged women to remove their shoes in public settings. So, yeah, 1960s Germany sounds like a weird place to be. So there you go. And I think that pretty much covers everything that I really wanted to say about 2024's Twisters. So there you go. Thanks. Short one this week, guys. All right. I'm sure most of you know Twisters is a long-awaited legacy sequel to the 1996 movie Twister that starred Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt. It also featured Cary Elwes and Philip Seymour Hoffman. I would definitely say the original is considered to be somewhat of a 90s blockbuster classic at this point in time. I got looking into that. 1996 is crazy stacked. Like, it is a crazy year of movies. Movies that made a ton of money, movies that eventually found their way to being considered classics years later. If you get a chance, just go look at the list of movies in 1996, where I thought over the last decade we had really had some oversaturation at the movie theaters. No, go look at 1996. It's just wild. All right. So let's really dive into Twisters here. So Twisters, as described on IMDb, is a story about a retired tornado chaser and meteorologist who is persuaded to return to work with a new team and new technologies. It is starring Daisy Edgar Jones, Glen Powell, Anthony Ramos, and it also features the next Man of Steel, David Cornsweet. As a cast, I mean, there's plenty of other, it's like, small ensemble characters as well, similar to the first movie where you've got these two teams essentially that are broken up. This one is a little more about, you've got the straight-laced kind of scientific team that are out there who are our main character finds herself aligning with, that is actually ran by Tony Ramos, and the other team is the kind of YouTube streamer sensation content thing led by Glen Powell, who I find the more you talk about this guy, you either really enjoy him or you want to punch him in the face. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground out there. I was surprised at how many people I talked to about Glen Powell, and they are literally just like, I just want to punch that dude in the face. He's got a face you can punch, which is wild to me. I find him entertaining. Like, I thought he was great in Top Gun. Anyway, so long story short, you get introduced to your main character in their past. She goes out, tries to do a tornado, bit. Tries to do this, she's trying to stop a tornado. That's her plan. She's got a scientific plan to stop tornadoes. And it doesn't go well, and things, go bad. And that's like her kind of personal trauma that she carries as you fast forward into the future. So this is all kind of in the trailers. I'm not like spoiling. It's not going to really impact the entertainment level as far as what this movie has to offer you. So she has that. She leaves town. She goes, sets up, and starts her life elsewhere. You know, she works in the big city. You know, gets recruited, essentially lured back to go back to her hometown out in Arkansas. And you know, you go, you have a handful of set pieces built around them going out chasing these tornadoes, trying to do data capturing. There's just, you know, minor tweaks to the mechanics and everything that are in play there. Then your YouTube people, your crazy, the wild people, more or less, this is a real, as I heard somebody, it was, this is a real jocks versus nerds situation. And they just have tornadoes set as the backdrop. And it's like, yeah, the original one was too. And you don't really think about it, but there's a lot of movies that if you just get down to it, it's just jocks versus nerds in a different skin. And that's kind of what this kind of, you know, has the backdrop of and everything. And you kind of learn a little bit about like what everybody's real motivations are as far as what they're doing out there. And, oh, what do you know? You know, Glen Powell, this wild, crazy YouTuber guy, has a little more to him than you knew. You know, Anthony Ramos, his character has a little more to him than what you'd been presented. And, you know, again, is the movie better off for either of those things? I don't know. Probably not. They're just fine. You know, but a lot of the first movie, this may not be fair, but like a lot of the first movie kind of carries off of like, you see where these people are based in their life. And it all kind of branches off of that opening scene where you see Helen Hunt as a child go through that whole thing. And it's just like, yeah, man, and this kind of somewhat damages her for the rest of her life. And then you see that damage kind of play into other things, and it kind of impacts her marriage, and yada, yada, you know, just kind of goes from there. And there's just a little more heart that I think that has a little more at stake. There's a little more depth, I guess, there. You know, the trauma that you see unfold in this new movie, there's loss of life there, but all of the participants are there willingly. So it's kind of like, sure, it's awful. Nobody, you know, but on the other hand, they all kind of knew what they signed up for. And at one point in this movie, that gets thrown into the main character's face, and you're like, I don't know. Just doesn't have any weight. And it just doesn't really land as well. It's not that any of this movie is bad. I'm not really interested, and I don't really care about any of the characters. I think the actors do fine with what they're given. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this Daisy Edgar Jones in anything, but she stands toe-to-toe with Glen Powell, and I think she does great, and that's fun, and, you know, and that's kind of awesome. I mean, I don't know if it's awesome. It's fine. You know, there's a secondary plot in this movie that's, that kind of gives a little bit of conflict between Daisy Edgar Jones and Anthony Ramos, and I don't know. To me, I'm like, this is a layer in a movie that I don't need. Like, maybe some people might be like, no, I think it's good they include that in there. Like, maybe people, it's good to know the corruption, you know, and it's just like, I don't know. If that, I mean, I'm sure it just seems like so standard in business as usual. Like, I don't know. It seemed unnecessary to me. Honestly, I hate to say this, I would cut his entire character out of the movie, and I would cut everything, pretty much all of the part of his story out of this movie. Like, all of that part, everything that he's attached to, I think you could have just removed and just said, and made this girl go back home to visit for some reason, and she just encounters this guy. Or maybe, you know, Glen Powell's character goes out there and tries to get her to come out because he's heard the stories about her. Because she kind of displays, like, very, she has a very strong aptitude to know when these storms are going to develop into tornadoes. and the weather patterns and the tornado patterns. And that's kind of like why she is, who she is. So you get to the later part of the movie. She's avoided going proper home this whole time. And she finally goes proper home to see her mom. And this is a role that you can just tell is 1,000% written with somebody in mind. They're like, well, we got to get Helen Hunt back for this. And it just is. And you can tell. And it was like, well, she clearly wasn't interested. She's not making anything else right now. So she just must have passed for whatever reason. Or maybe they really got further into it and decided nah, maybe this isn't the right way to do this. I do think that that's a bit of a strength, though, to this as a legacy sequel, where a lot of legacy sequels get really heavy as far as shoving the original in your face and kind of constantly reminding you and honestly aggressively winking at the audience hey, remember this? I think for the most part, this movie does a good job of not falling into that trap. This movie, I think if you, aside from it being about tornadoes, if this were set with hurricanes, it could just be its own movie. You wouldn't even notice. You know what I mean? Because there's a handful of elements that are so prevalent in the original, that is what ties it together. And again, some of the similar set pieces as far as I don't know, I won't go too far into that, but some of the set pieces are set in very similar locations. And that's really about as far as that goes. And there's a little bit of here or there, you see, if you guys happen to remember, you see a Dorothy machine being used out there, right? And it kind of, they talk about it and give it some perspective at this point as far as where it's at with the technology that it provided. But speaking of technology and science, I don't know anything about any of this stuff. So it's all mumbo jumbo, whatever. I live in the Midwest. So I mean, we deal with tornado sirens. Tornadoes have hit, oddly enough, it seems like tornadoes have hit Ohio much more over the last 2 years seems like there has been a legitimate tornado outbreak that's occurred recently, which I remember seeing the first trailer for this movie. I was like, well, you guys couldn't have timed this any better. This is on front of mind for a lot of people. And they kind of, obviously in those sequences you see the the devastation that's unleashed on these neighborhoods and these small towns as these tornadoes rip through them. And it's it's pretty harrowing, and again, and it's seeing that and comparing that to news footage that I've that we've all seen. It's this is a devastating element. That is the scary part of this movie, right? Is a tornado could happen, right? And if they had just mainly and only focused on that, and that the hero, all your main characters, I said here, their main goal is to provide better attention, better warnings. And again, kind of where it gets a little wild is your main character's goal is to just stop a tornado. That you can introduce an element into a tornado that will cause it to disperse, break apart more or less. And I'm sure maybe there's something to that. I don't know. But it's a movie. So I it's fine, right? I'm good with that. That's, that's what we're going with here. Armageddon is about sending drillers into space to drop a nuke on an asteroid that's coming towards Earth, right? We've had a lot of stupid premises in movies in our history. It's fine, right? I don't mind. Just entertain me. So overall, I think the story it's just okay. Didn't super grab me. I wasn't really, I just didn't care really about anybody who's in this movie, which again is unfortunate because the cast seems really good. Even the wide cast of characters that make up the different groups seem fun, and like I said, I didn't even mention, new Superman is in this, and he's just pretty much a thumb who is specifically called out as having not a lot of personality or charm, like he's a no fun guy. And I mean, he's fine, right? I mean, he does the job, no problem. Visual effects, I think they're solid. Like, there's nothing that really jumps out in my mind as far as like, that's just that, because again, it's kind of meant to be close to realistic, but like right around the corner of it. So as you see some of the destruction and everything with the tornadoes as they're there, they're all fine. Nothing really quite completely blew you away, and I was kind of, I think, hoping a little bit for that. That original is such a landmark as far as visual effects goes, like, and I know it's just hard to do that. Like, as there's been close to 30 years of, computer-generated images being used for visual effects in movies, and, obviously we've just seen so much. There's so much we've seen over that time, so it is hard for visual effects to really jump out in a movie at this point and make you go, wow, right? But I think it does pretty good overall. It's a little bit of business where they go and they're kind of like watching the clouds and they're kind of discussing their predictions on the storm pattern and what's going on there. And I think that gets a little over the top. So how does it stack up against the original Twister? If I've got both of them in my hand and it's like, which one are we watching? There's no question. I would pick the original Twister like 10 out of 10 times. Like, not that it's some masterpiece of perfection or anything. For its era, for what it is, the cast that's in it, Philip Seymour, it just lands better. That movie just lands better than this one does. Not to say that you can't have fun with this. A lot of people, I could tell, seemed like they were having a pretty good time watching this movie, which, oh man, one more thing I gotta talk about really quick is the music in this movie. Like, good lord. Too much music. Too much country going on. Too much going on. And then at one point it literally turns into like a music video where your main character drives away as she's finally driving home to mom's house. Some sad song on, and it's like, I've got to reflect about my past. And it's like, oh, this is not the moment that this movie really needs. Like, it just doesn't. It just isn't. But how does it stack up? Like I said, yeah, I'm grabbing the original 10 out of 10 times. Not that this is awful. Not that this is bad. I think it's just fine. Just kind of lands and fine. And you might go and have a great big fun time with it. I don't think it was big enough or dumb enough to be big dumb fun, because I think it tries to do a little too much. Again, if you take that character out and you take his whole secondary plot out and everything that's attached to it, I think you've got a thinner and cleaner movie that just works a little more as far as like just about her working through that trauma a little more. And I think that would have worked better, but that's just not on the cards there. That's just not happening. How does it stack up with legacy sequels? I don't know. I think it's all right. I think it gets some points simply for it doesn't feel particularly like a legacy sequel like so many of the other ones do, where, like I said, that they take time and they are kind of winking at you as they're telling their story. This movie doesn't really wink at you as it tells the story. It just kind of tells the story. And that's kudos to this thing. So I think it does a good job of having its own identity despite revisiting some of the obviously similar beats. That identity that it does find isn't exactly interesting to me. So, where does Twisters land on Stubs or not to Stubs? I would say not to Stubs. Like, the visuals are fun and it's loud, but like, I don't think you have to see it. I don't think it's good enough to warrant going and dropping, maybe you want to do a $5 Tuesday or whatever. Perfect, right? Got a matinee. Yeah. You just want to go kind of watch something? Sure. Go and do it. You know what I mean? But I would not say, yeah, you gotta go watch this. I don't see this movie being added to my collection. Yeah, So, number wise, this is gonna be a little more. I'd say like a 6.2. Like, Because, again, it's not terrible. There's things that I was fine with, but nothing particularly jumps out. Nothing, you know what I mean? There's just nothing that stands out about this movie. This is definitely a movie. And as I watched it and I went through it, I definitely was like, this is one of those, this is a dry erase board movie. You got 7 people in a boardroom. Hey, we've got this property. Let's dive right back into it. What do we need to make this movie? What makes a Twister movie? And they wrote a list of things down, and then they made a movie and said, all right, well, we will make this movie, and it will have these things in it, and I'm sure it'll do fine. So that's just me. This is one of those movies where I would say, I know some people would call me out as being a slight movie snob, and that's fine. I think a lot of people are going to watch this movie and have a good time, and that's awesome. But for me, it's just kind of there. Like, it didn't really do anything. And I didn't even have high, like, I wasn't going in, like, thinking, like, oh, this could be great. No, I just kind of went in, like, I hope to have some fun here. I had a little bit of fun, but I also was like, we might be doing a little too much here. Somebody could have edited this thing better. But there you go. That is where I land on Twisters. Not to stub, 6.2. But there is one other rating metric that we have to hold this movie up to. And I think every kid born in the 80s will understand where I'm going here. And that is, will this movie be watched by all of the moms in America every time this movie is on TNT? Yes, absolutely. Just like Twister was on, it just seemed like Twister was on TV all the time at the end of my childhood, and then early 2000s. I feel, yes, this movie will occupy that same space. The last time I watched 1996 Twister was 2020, and I was at my mom's house. It was on cable TV. We were all getting together, and we had gotten a bunch of the kids together and done pizza or something like that. But it was on, and it was definitely the first time I think my kids had been exposed to that movie. I don't know if they've even watched it, but yeah, good times. Really quick before I get out of here, I just want to cover something else that I watched this week. Is I finished the latest season of The Boys, and I would say overall it's not bad. I mean, there's good stuff in there, kind of made me chuckle, a little bit of good action in there. I still really love the cast. I think everybody does a great job. As it wraps up and gets into its season finale, it definitely has the feeling of a season finale that was like, all right, well, let's bridge and be prepared for the final season. So that's fine. I mean, I kind of figured that's what we were getting into. But if you've been doing The Boys so far, I know there's a lot of talk out there where people are like, oh, it's just so bad this year. And it's so, I don't know. I think it's about where it's been trending for the last 2 seasons or so. So yeah, if you enjoy The Boys, give that one a shot. I finally watched Idea Man, the Jim Henson biodoc. I finished Star Wars The Acolyte, X-Men 97. Again, so I think one of my next pods I'm hoping to do will be Deadpool, and I'll just kind of do Deadpool and then lump my Disney stuff together into that. You know, kind of similar to this. We're just some basic thoughts and feelings as far as that goes. But I just wanted to mention it. I don't want to do a whole pod on it, so. All right, guys, that's all I got. So what did you think? Let me know in the comments below. As always, please like and subscribe. Go find me on the socials by searching Stubs with Jason. Feel free to hit me up in the comments, messenger, or email me at stubswithjason@gmail.com with more recommendations for things to review. Movies, albums, concert sets, TV shows. Well, probably not so much TV shows. That's a commitment. But all are welcome. So, until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.
Stubs.
Stubs.
Stubs all done.